She said my name like it was something she hadn't meant to say out loud. Soft. Careful. The kind of voice that filled a quiet room without trying to. It was late, the kind of late where the world outside the windows blurred into nothing, and the hum of the overhead lights felt too loud. Everyone else had gone. Just her, and me. I shouldn't have stayed behind. At least that's what I told myself every few minutes. But then she turned, that calm, deliberate way she always did, and asked me to help her pack up the last of the papers. Her name was Elena, though none of us ever said it. To everyone else she was Ms. Hart. But to me, she was a sound that didn't quite leave my head after class. She was leaning over the desk, stacking folders with the kind of precision that made time slow down. Her hair, loose now, fell forward as she worked. A small strand brushed her cheek, and for a second, I wanted to move it away. I didn't. I just stood there, pretending to straighten the chairs. "You always did know how to change the room," she said suddenly, not looking at me. The words hung there, quiet but heavy. I didn't know what she meant, not really. But I knew the way she said it. The pause before the sentence ended. The small smile she tried to hide. I walked closer, slowly, until I could smell the faint trace of her perfume, something warm, faintly floral, like it didn't belong to this hour of the night. "What do you mean?" I asked. My voice cracked a little. She looked up then, finally meeting my eyes. There was something in hers, not surprise, not even hesitation. Just that quiet awareness that comes when two people realize they've crossed into something they can't name yet. "You make everything feel." She started, then stopped, pressing her lips together as if searching for a safer word. "Different." Her fingers brushed against mine when she handed me a folder. It wasn't an accident. Or maybe it was, but she didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. It wasn't a movie moment, no music, no dramatic pause. Just the sound of paper sliding, and the faint catch of breath that neither of us acknowledged. "I didn't mean to stay this late," I said, trying to sound casual. She smiled, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You say that every time." Every time. So she noticed too. For a moment, we stood in that tiny classroom like the rest of the world had pressed pause. The clock ticked, the air conditioner hummed, and her eyes lingered just a heartbeat longer than they should have. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. And maybe that silence said everything. Her hand moved again, collecting the last paper on the desk. When she reached for the light switch, her sleeve brushed against my arm. It was nothing. It was everything. The room dimmed, soft light from the hallway spilling across her face. She turned toward the door, but didn't open it yet. Her hand rested on the frame, and she said barely above a whisper, "Next time, don't wait until everyone's gone." Then came the sound of footsteps, someone passing by in the hall. The moment snapped, fragile as glass. She glanced at me once more, her expression unreadable, then opened the door. The light from the corridor fell across us both, too bright, too ordinary. And just before she stepped out, she looked back and said quietly, "Good night, Noah." The door closed, and the silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I didn't see her for 3 days. Long enough for the memory of that night to dull at the edges, but not enough for it to fade. Every time I passed her classroom, the door was open, lights on, her voice steady as ever. I'd catch fragments, discussions, laughter, the clink of her pen against the desk. She looked untouched by that moment we shared. I wasn't sure if I imagined it. Then, on Friday, she called me in after class. "Stay for a minute?" she said, not looking up. There it was again, that voice that could sound like an order or a confession, depending on how she said it. I stayed. The room emptied, one by one. The chatter faded into the hall, leaving behind that familiar hum of quiet air. She finally looked up. "You've been somewhere else this week," she said. "Trouble sleeping?" I laughed, a little too quickly. "Something like that." Her eyes softened, not in pity, but in recognition. "I know what that's like," she said, sitting back. "It used to be worse when I lived alone." That was the first time she mentioned her life beyond these walls. She didn't wear a ring. She never spoke about anyone waiting for her. Still, something about the way she said it, used to be, sounded like a story she'd closed too tightly to reopen. I hesitated. Do you still live alone? Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Some habits stay longer than they should. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt suspended. I stepped closer, under the pretense of helping with the projector cable. Her hand brushed mine when we reached for the same wire. She didn't move away this time. I shouldn't, she murmured. Not to me, to herself. Her breath was warm against my wrist, and the air between us seemed to lose all its space. I swallowed. You don't have to. That broke her focus. She drew in a quiet breath, straightened her posture, and stepped back, the way someone might after realizing how close they've drifted to a ledge. Her tone changed, lighter now. You're too young to say things like that so calmly. I'm old enough to mean them, I said, softer than I intended. She didn't reply. Just gave that small exhale, the one that sounded like laughter she didn't want to let out. When she turned to gather her things, I caught sight of a small photograph tucked into her notebook, a man, smiling. It wasn't new. The colors had faded at the edges. I didn't ask. She didn't explain. But when she noticed me noticing, she quietly closed the book and said, Some people are better left in the past. It should have been the end of the conversation. Instead, she touched my shoulder, just a light, grounding touch, and left her hand there a beat too long. Go home, Noah, she said. But the softness in her tone betrayed her words. I nodded, though neither of us moved. When I finally turned toward the door, her voice followed me, quiet, uncertain. Next week, same time? I didn't trust myself to answer, so I just looked back. She understood anyway. And for a moment before I stepped out, she smiled, the kind of smile that comes right before something changes. The next week, it rained. That kind of slow, soaking rain that makes every sound softer. The hallways emptied faster, voices echoing and fading into the storm outside. I was supposed to drop off the project files and leave. That was it. But when I reached her classroom, the lights were still on. She was there, alone again. The window behind her was a blur of moving water. Her coat hung on the back of a chair, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, and her hair pulled loosely, a version of her that existed only after hours. She didn't look up when I walked in. You really shouldn't make a habit of showing up when it rains, she said. I smiled. Maybe I like the quiet. She gave a small laugh, but her eyes stayed on the papers. Quiet isn't always safe. Something about the way she said it made my pulse skip. I walked closer, holding out the file. I just came to drop this off, she finished, finally meeting my eyes. You said that last time. The way she looked at me, steady, unblinking, made it hard to remember what I'd planned to say next. For a few seconds, the only sound was the rain against the window. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression tightening for just a moment before she flipped it face down. Bad news? I asked quietly. Just someone who used to check in. She pushed the phone away, like it might burn her if she let it stay close. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. There was something private in her distance, the kind of silence that didn't want to be solved. Instead, I moved to the desk beside hers, sitting down, watching her hand trace the rim of her mug. You ever regret not saying something when you had the chance? I asked. Her hand stilled. You mean, in general? I nodded, though we both knew what I meant. She gave a small, humorless smile. I used to think silence was safer. Now I'm not sure if it's just another way of running. The room felt smaller then, the air thicker, filled with the smell of rain and her perfume. She looked at me, really looked this time. I leaned forward without realizing how close we'd gotten. My knee brushed hers. She didn't move. Her breath caught. Mine followed. The space between us was one word wide. If either of us spoke, it would have closed completely. And then, the door handle turned. We both flinched. A student peeked in, surprised. Ms. Hart? Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were still here. She straightened instantly, her tone even. Just reviewing grades. What do you need, Ava? While she spoke, she didn't look at me. I could see her pulse at her throat, fast and uneven. Ava left after a moment, the door clicking shut. The silence that followed was sharper than before. Her voice came out low. You need to be careful, Noah. People see what they want to see. I nodded, though my hands were trembling slightly. When I stood to leave, she reached out, just enough to catch my wrist. Not hard, just there. Wait, she said. Her fingers loosened, sliding away almost as soon as they touched. You didn't do anything wrong. But her eyes said we both did. Outside, thunder rolled closer now. Neither of us moved for a long time. The distance between us was measured in breaths, hers quick, mine uneven, until the lights flickered, and she finally whispered, Go before it gets worse. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. Behind me, I could still feel her touch, small, trembling, and far too real to forget. It happened on a Thursday. The kind of day that felt heavier than it should, too warm, too quiet, like the air itself was holding something back. She'd asked me to stop by after the last class. Just to help organize a few things, she said. But her tone, it wasn't about the papers. When I walked in, she was standing by the window, staring out at nothing. Her posture was too still. You okay? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, someone reported that I've been distracted lately. I froze. Because of me? Her laugh was soft, but it cracked. Because of how I've been acting. Which I suppose includes you. The distance between us felt unbearable. I wanted to tell her it wasn't fair, that no one saw the late nights, the quiet conversations that weren't about anything improper. But the truth hung there between us, undeniable. Do you ever think about what this looks like? She asked quietly. Yes. And you still come back? Yes. That made her finally turn. You shouldn't. I know. She exhaled, her voice shaking just a little. You make it impossible to stay the same, Noah. Something in me broke then, the part that had been holding back, pretending I didn't care as much as I did. I don't want you to stay the same, I said, stepping closer. Her eyes widened. She didn't move away. The desk was between us, but it didn't feel like enough. I could smell her perfume again, faint, familiar, like memory itself. You think this is just a moment? She whispered. It's not. It follows me home. Her words hit like confession. I walked around the desk slowly, my heart loud in my ears. Then stop pretending it doesn't. She shook her head, half in disbelief, half in surrender. You don't understand what it would mean. I don't care what it means, I said too quickly. But the words stuck. She reached up, almost unconsciously, brushing her fingers through her hair, and when one strand fell forward, I moved without thinking, tucking it behind her ear. My hand lingered longer than it should. She closed her eyes. Noah! Her voice was barely there. My fingertips brushed the edge of her jaw, tracing the air more than her skin. Her breathing changed, short, uneven, like she was trying not to move but couldn't help it. Tell me to stop, I said. She didn't. For a moment, we just stood there, the world narrowing to the rhythm of our breathing, the closeness that made it impossible to tell whose heart was pounding harder. Then she whispered, If I tell you to stop, you will. Yes. And if I don't? I looked at her, at the faint tremor in her lips, the conflict in her eyes. Then it's not just me anymore, I said quietly. She opened her mouth, maybe to answer, maybe to stop me, but before either could happen, a knock rattled the door. Her hand fell away. We both froze. Through the glass, a shadow moved, someone waiting. Her voice came out steady, practiced. Just a second. Our eyes met, panic, longing, everything at once. She whispered, almost to herself, This can't keep happening. But when she looked at me, Her hand was still shaking, and it reached for mine anyway, just once, before she turned toward the door. The knock came again. Louder. And just like that, the moment broke, but didn't end. The next morning, she didn't show up. Her classroom was dark. The blinds were half drawn. The air smelled faintly like chalk and something missing. By noon, I asked one of the staff if she was okay. They said she'd taken the day off. Personal reasons. That phrase felt like a locked door. That evening, she texted me. Can you stop by? I need to talk. Her apartment was smaller than I imagined, books stacked on the floor, a single lamp casting warm light. She opened the door in a loose sweater, eyes tired but steady. Sorry for the mess, she said. You don't have to apologize. She nodded, half listening, half somewhere else. Then she said, someone overheard us. The words hit like cold air. In the classroom? Yes. That night it rained. Her voice shook faintly. I thought we were alone, but someone stayed behind to collect a notebook. Do they know? No? Not exactly. But they said there was tension. That I was being inappropriate. I felt my pulse rise. That's not fair. It doesn't matter what's fair, she said quietly. It matters what it looks like. She walked past me, brushing my shoulder as she moved, that same accidental closeness that always set the room on fire. But this time, it felt desperate, heavy. I can fix this, I said. Her laugh came out uneven. You think this is something to fix? Noah, it's not a broken chair. It's my career. The way she said my name made something inside me tighten, not anger, not pity, just a deep ache. Then tell them it's not true, I said. She turned sharply, eyes flashing. Isn't it? The question hung between us like a live wire. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She saw it, that hesitation, and it broke something in her face. You see? That's the problem. You can't even lie for me. I stepped closer. I don't want to lie. Then what do you want? Her voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly she was too close, her hand brushing against my chest as she tried to move past. I caught her wrist gently. To not pretend, I said. She didn't pull away. Her pulse fluttered beneath my fingers. Do you have any idea what that would cost me? She whispered. Yes. Her breath trembled. You're too young to ruin someone else's life. I took another step forward. Maybe it's not ruin. Maybe it's just the truth. The space between us was gone now, her forehead nearly touching mine, both of us breathing too fast. She closed her eyes. You shouldn't have come here. Then why did you ask me to? Her lips parted, not for words, but a sound somewhere between a sigh and surrender. Then, from behind her, a light blinked, her phone lighting up on the counter. A message. She turned, almost afraid. I caught the glimpse before she snatched it away. They know. Meeting tomorrow. When she looked back at me, her face was pale, unreadable. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she said quietly, we don't have much time to decide what we are. The words lingered, both a warning and a promise. And as she reached for the light switch, our hands brushed again, neither of us pulling away this time. The next day, the halls felt colder. Everyone moved as if they knew something had shifted. Maybe they did. I found her after the meeting. She was standing by her car in the empty lot, coat half on, papers clutched too tightly. Her hair was loose again, strands caught in the wind. She didn't see me at first. When she did, she looked both relieved and terrified. It's done, she said. They're reviewing things. Which means they already decided what to believe. I stepped closer, fighting the instinct to reach for her. You could deny it. Her eyes flicked up. And make you a liar? I'd do it, I said. If it means you keep this. She shook her head, almost smiling. You still think this is about my job? Then what is it about? Her voice softened. It's about what happens after. When it stops being a secret and starts being real. When people start asking how someone like me ended up with someone like you. I didn't have an answer. Just the ache in my chest that came every time she looked at me that way, half wanting, half afraid. I don't care what they think, I said finally. You will. Her certainty hit harder than I wanted to admit. She turned to open the car door, but I caught it before she could. The papers fell from her hand, scattering across the pavement. Neither of us moved to pick them up. Her breath came fast. Mine matched it. You always do this, she said, her voice low, trembling. You walk in like you don't know what you do to me. I do know, I whispered. The wind pressed her coat against her body, and I stepped closer until there was no air left between us. My hand brushed her arm, then her neck, light, careful, like touching something that could vanish. She didn't pull away this time. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, angry, longing all at once. If we do this, there's no going back. Maybe we stopped going back a long time ago. The silence that followed was a heartbeat stretched thin. The world shrank, no cars, no noise, just the warmth of her breath near my lips, the smell of rain clinging to her skin. She reached up, fingertips tracing my jaw, stopping just before they could turn the thought into action. Then she exhaled. Noah! The sound of my name in her voice undid me. For 1 second, we leaned in, that perfect, unbearable space before something irreversible. Then she pressed her forehead to mine instead. Her whisper was steady this time. If I choose this, I lose everything. I closed my eyes. And if you don't? She smiled, small, breaking, beautiful. Then I lose you. Her hand slipped from my neck, fingers brushing my chest as she stepped back. The distance hurt instantly. She gathered the scattered papers, breathing unevenly. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet but clear. Weeks passed before I saw her again. Long enough for the ache to settle into something quieter, the kind of missing that stops shouting but never really leaves. Rumors faded. Meetings ended. The world kept moving, pretending it hadn't held its breath over two people who shouldn't have meant this much to each other. I tried to do the same. Until one evening, as the last bit of sunlight slipped between the buildings, I saw her outside the little cafe by the corner, the one she used to stop at before work. She was sitting by the window, coffee untouched, staring at nothing. I almost walked past. Almost. Then she looked up, and our eyes met through the glass. For a second, she didn't move. Then, a small nod. Invitation. Permission. Inside, everything smelled like cinnamon and rain-soaked coats. She was wearing that same soft sweater, the one from her apartment, sleeves pushed to her elbows. You look tired, I said, sitting across from her. She smiled faintly. I was waiting for you to say that. I wasn't sure if I should. You always were terrible at pretending, she murmured, eyes lowering. I laughed quietly. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's not, she said, her voice gentler now. It's what made me notice you in the first place. The silence that followed didn't sting this time. It was softer, something healed but still tender. So, I said carefully, how are things now? She shrugged. Different. I left. It was time. It hit me slower than I expected. You left? She nodded. I realized I'd built my whole life around not being seen. And then you walked in and... She stopped, searching for words. You reminded me what it felt like to be alive, not just appropriate. My throat tightened. I didn't mean to make things harder. You didn't, she said. You just made them honest. We sat there, the hum of the cafe around us, cups clinking, a song playing too quietly to name. She reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. No hesitation this time. Her hand was warm, small movements tracing along my skin like she was memorizing it. I'm not your teacher anymore, she said softly. I never really thought of you that way, I whispered. That made her laugh, that real laugh I hadn't heard in too long. When I stood to leave, she stood too. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. Outside, the air was cool. The kind that carries the promise of something new. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint lines near her eyes, the ones she always tried to hide. Her hand came up, rested lightly on my chest. Still think I changed the room? She asked. I smiled. Only the ones I'm in. She shook her head, but the smile stayed. Then she leaned forward, just enough for her forehead to rest against mine, simple, steady, grounding. The city moved around us. The world didn't stop. But it didn't need to. She whispered. Maybe this time, we don't run. And I said, maybe we don't have to. Her fingers tightened around mine. No rush. No hiding. Just quiet, shared breath under the dim streetlight. Two people, finally letting the silence mean peace instead of fear. Go home, she said softly. Before I change my mind. I stood there, frozen, watching her drive away. And for the first time, I understood, this wasn't about fear or rules or consequence. It was about two people who finally saw each other too clearly to pretend anymore.